But at the end of the day, as an organisation, we exist to make people's lives better. And that is a sort of goal that has felt more at home for me.
Hi, welcome to Project Management Matters. This is Philip Diab. I'm so excited to be with you today to talk about all things project management. This is a podcast that discusses everything from project, program, portfolio management, and PMOs. Today, we're super excited to have Elizabeth Harrin with us. Welcome, Elizabeth. Great to have you here. I think you and I go way back. We started exchanging emails and reading each other's blogs and engaging in a variety of different topics in project management. I would say for me, you're probably one of the original project management bloggers and project management leaders who kind of leaned into project management on social media. So welcome and great to see you.
Thank you very much for having me on the show. Yes, and we do go way back. I was trying to work out when it was, and actually I couldn't pinpoint it, but you're right. We've been doing what we do for a long time, and we've crossed paths on the internet, and also I think we've probably met at conferences over the years as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when I had the discussion with Al Zaytoun a few weeks ago, he said that it's better not to pinpoint the exact timeline. Just keep it a mystery.
Yes.
But you know, I think that blogging has been around for a long time and it has evolved significantly. Maybe that's a great place to kind of start. Maybe you can share with us a little bit about how you got into social media and how you saw that coincide with project management and leverage, and you started leveraging that in your professional career, as it were.
Yes. Well, I've always been interested in writing, so the blog was a natural extension of things that I'd written. So I started writing for magazines at university, although I didn't write about project management then because I wasn't a project manager. But as a way to supplement my income and also to get some experience, and because I thought that maybe journalism was something I might want to go into. So I started writing articles and pitching magazines on topics that I felt like I could comment on. And then I suppose when I got to work after university and finding a job and becoming a project manager, I then started to contribute articles to Ganthead. Back in the day, projectmanagement.com, which is now owned by PMI, was originally called Ganthead, and so I contributed articles to them. And then I started speaking at conferences about the work I was doing, and that then meant people were reaching out to say, oh, could you write up that case study? Can you do an article on this, that, and the other? And I suppose it just started little bits and pieces from there. And then blogging, like proper blogging, I started when I wrote my first book. So because of this interest in writing, I always thought I'm going to write a book before I'm 30. And I had nothing. I had no capabilities to write fiction. So I knew I had to write a non-fiction book. As my job, because I spend lots of hours there, as we all do. So I pitched a publisher a project management book, and they took ages, months to come back and say no. And then I pitched a smaller publisher, and they rang me within a week or so and said, yes, we'd love to go ahead. And so I started to think about, well, how am I going to write this book? And one of the marketing tools that was available to bloggers available to authors 20 years ago was to start publishing more stuff on the internet to get an audience, to get your voice out there. And then that's how the blog started, really. And then I just never stopped.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think back to when I started working on my book. I wanted to also get published, and I remember finishing the first draft of the manuscript and pitching it to a couple of publishers. And one publisher, came back and said, this is great. Can you write another 300 pages? Because, it's not enough. We publish textbooks. And I knew immediately that there was a disconnect between the type of book that I wanted to publish versus what they were looking for. So it sounds like maybe you had a similar journey in the sense that you had to kind of find the right type of publisher to work with that was interested in what you had to say.
Yes, I think so. And I think I also just hit them at the right time because they were expanding into different business areas. And it's really difficult to look back and remember what project management was like 25 years ago, because it wasn't like it is today. Just thinking about how much we all rely on social media, and we didn't have TikTok back then. We didn't have um, Instagram or Threads. We were really finding our way. And when I was putting project management articles up on my blog, I lived in France for some of that time, and I had one of those tiny desks you can buy from like a catalogue shop in the corner of the front room, and I was learning how to file transfer load up um,
Hmm.
my CSS files and things like that, because WordPress wasn't the same user-friendly interface that it is now. And it was also a lot more about personal stories. So there was a blogger that I really loved called Petite Anglaise, and she was writing about her life as a British expat living and working in France. And so it really resonated with me, some of the experiences that she shared, because I was also in France as well. And um, so I just chose my web hosting company because she'd got a footnote on her blog saying who she was hosted by. So, but it was also personal stories. So I was writing, oh, I did this at work today, and this is how I'm going to relate this particular work incident to my life, or an incident in my life to this. And I posted like a recipe for making a great smoothie before you start work if you haven't got time to grab breakfast
Hmm.
because you're such a busy project manager. All kinds of stuff that these days, the goal of the internet has changed, I think, and now we're using it more for, what do I put in my risk log? How do I answer this quick question? What do I say to my stakeholder when they say that my plan is, they don't like the fact that my project is delayed? People go there seeking answers, not so much stories anymore. And
Hmm.
hopefully there'll be a bit of a swing back, because with the role of AI, so much of the stuff that we're writing online or you see written online is just regurgitated. Everybody, how many ways is there to talk about action logs, for example? Every blog, every website's got an action log article, and I've been using action logs since before they were a thing. So hopefully maybe we'll see a bit more personal stories come in. Has that been your experience of web content and project management online
I
as
think,
well?
one thing I was thinking about when you were talking just now is the concept of storytelling and how it evolved over time. I think that within the context of blogging, that definitely has evolved. And as you look at how people use social media today with Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn, Facebook, etc., there's a certain style of storytelling that is slightly different and unique in each different platform. But also, if you compare it to 20 years ago, it's certainly different. Have you noticed that, and has your storytelling evolved with the time, as it were?
Well, I don't know whether I've evolved with the times. I have tried to change how I write about project management so that it's less of my personal story and more who is the reader and what do they need to get out of it, which is how I think we
Mhm.
should do all stakeholder communications, really, because it's less about us as the project manager telling them what's interesting to us. We need to tailor communications to our audiences. So I think there's been a shift there in how I try to frame articles. And I will still write in, when I did this, this is what happened, or in my experience, stakeholders like this, or a few gems of personal experience to bring it to life and make it sound like I do actually know what I'm talking about, and I have actually done this job for a long time, and I'm not some you know person who's just pressing a button in ChatGPT to create an article and literally have no idea what they're talking about.
Mhm.
Um, but I do try and make it much more useful for other people reading it now, because I think that's how I want to use the internet. I want to go and get an article on, I don't know, I was looking up earlier today, but we're going on holiday, so where are the best places for breakfast near Calais? Those kinds of questions, and I don't want a 3,000 word personal essay. I want 5 bullet points of, these are the family friendly restaurants that you can find when you get off the Channel Tunnel. And I'm sure other people looking for project management content online have a problem that they want to solve, and that's why they're reading the stuff that we write or
Yeah.
watching the videos. I don't really do videos.
I have to say that it could be very addictive watching videos, especially how easy it is from one video to the next on a variety of topics. Before we jump into kind of looking at the future, and I do want to explore that with you in terms of what's happening today and what's happening in the future. Let's kind of rewind a little bit and talk about the origin story. And my particular interest in interacting with a lot of professionals is getting to asking the question of, are you an accidental PM versus someone who purposefully chose project management, and then especially how the connection with PMI happened. Maybe you can share a little bit about that, and we can explore that a little more.
Okay. Well, I'm not an accidental project manager, although I accidentally found out that it was a job. So I did an English literature degree. I have no idea what that was going to lead me into naturally, unless it was teaching, which I didn't really want to do. So I joined a big company. I joined American Express and did their graduate training scheme, spending time in various different departments, as we did back then. I don't know if they still do that, graduates. And then one of the departments that I was placed in for 3 months was called business re-engineering or business engineering. Anyway, and it was basically a project management team, a big
Mm-hmm.
department of project managers leading various different projects out of the European office that was based in Brighton at the time. And so I was only there 3 months, but it had such a fundamental impact on me because I just felt so at home with this team who were who I just joined as the 3 month graduate trainee, and they had to sort of embrace regardless and find me interesting things to do. Um, and you can't contribute much in 3 months really when you don't know anything. But I was listening and absorbing all around me, and it was just that made me realise, I think I could do this job. So when that graduate training scheme ended, I was looking around for a job that was a project management job, because suddenly, and we had, I don't know, maybe 30 graduates in the intake, maybe more, and there were
Mm-hmm.
lots of different places where you could have ended up. So it was just luck that I had been allocated this particular 3 month placement, and I did others that were in different areas of the organisation that didn't quite give me the same spark. So yeah, it was an accidental find, but once I'd found it, I thought, yes, this is for me, and found my way into that job. And you asked me about PMI as well, didn't you? What was that?
Yeah. Yeah, like how did you discover PMI? Did that come early? So many of the colleagues that I've spoken with, especially the accidental ones, tell stories of, they went out and looking for information, and then they discovered PMI. It was almost like the best hidden, best kept secret of the industry, as it were.
I don't know when I came across them, to be honest. Probably through Ganthead, because
Mhm.
um, in the UK, all my project management training in my 20s was to do with Prince,
Mhm.
because we went on Prince 2 training courses. We had internal training opportunities, but it was all very much Prince based, because that was what was the prevailing methodology in the UK at the time. Um, and so, because of being online and having um, websites that I was reading and reading magazines and things like that, I probably found out that PMI existed as an organization more in the US at that time. And of course, now, we've got a UK chapter. We've probably had a UK chapter for years, but
Mhm.
in my 20s, I
Yeah.
can't say that I was that aware of it. Um, but the UK project management community, I think I got more into that and into going to PMI UK events, going to British Computer Society project management chapter events when I lived in London, because it was very, very easy to work a day in London and then just walk around the corner or take a tube
Mhm.
or a bus to where they were doing evening seminars. And honestly, there's something I could have done something once a week at least. And then there's breakfasts being laid on by training providers or by organisations. There's so many networking events, and I think one of the things that I was very conscious of doing as a younger woman was networking, because I didn't have a new job, new city. I just needed to put my feelers out there and make connections. And I think you can make connections online. I was very active on Twitter back in the day, and I met loads of like internet friends through
Yeah.
through Twitter, project management people, but also real life connections as well, people who you can talk to. So networking events, and I'm trying to think back. I don't know if that's how I found PMI, but it sounds like a plausible story, doesn't it? It's
Yeah,
been part of my life for a
absolutely.
long time.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that the themes around networking and community building are very strong when it comes to finding people who have common interest and engaging with them. I found in my own experience A lot of times the professional connection often ends up leading to friendships as well, because you find so many things in common with these professionals that you're interacting with, especially if you happen to be based locally. But as you said, with the age of the internet, a lot of our friends are internet friends as well. You connect through, back in the day, conference call, now video conferencing, and engaging in social media. So it's multidimensional, in my
Yeah.
experience.
It was one of the early PMI conferences I attended in America. I don't remember where exactly. I met Dave Garrett, who has now got a very senior post within PMI, and at the time um, he was running Ganthead, and they had a stand at the conference, and he was also part of the PMI social media council that they put together, where they connected a group of um, people who were blogging and had online project management presence across various different platforms to help PMI shape their strategy about social media. And now obviously Ganthead is projectmanagement.com, which is owned by PMI, and we're still in touch. He wrote the foreword for my book,
Yeah,
which came out last month. So it's just lovely to think that chance conversations, sitting with someone at a table in a conference 15 years ago, has I've seen his career grow and expand, and the success that he's had with projectmanagement.com, and the influence that he now has within that role to be able to shape the profession, and how the online world responds to that profession. So yeah, it is very important, I think, to build a network.
absolutely. I think it's exciting to kind of see that progress. And when you look at your career and how it evolved, what are some of the takeaways or the learnings that you have from those early days that you find yourself, you're still kind of reflecting on and thinking, wow, it's great that I learned these things early on and I'm still applying, versus looking back perhaps and saying, some of these ideas are outdated and maybe not so much applicable in today's environment.
Well, that's really interesting, because I think most of the stuff that I still try and live by today is still relevant. I'm just trying to think if I left anything behind. I think I was very ambitious in my 20s, and I sort of thought this would be amazing. I'll grow up and have an amazing career and lead huge projects and be really rich and famous, um, and do loads of cool things. And then my life took a different turn, because I was offered a job in France, which was an opportunity that was amazing, and I would definitely do it again. And I would encourage people to have the opportunity to work abroad if you ever have the opportunity to do that, because it really does broaden your horizons in ways that you wouldn't expect. Um, but it did mean that I was out of the UK workforce for 2.5 years, and then I had children, and that kind of meant that I worked part-time for, gosh, probably 10 years. Um, and I only went back to working full-time last year. So I've had a long time where, and I look at other people's careers and think, wow, that's amazing. Why am I not doing what you're doing? Why am I not leading, international gigantic projects, or running a team of 500 people? And often when you talk to them, they've made sacrifices in other aspects of their life. So, there was someone I worked with who was a hugely influential, very interesting woman in a senior role, and she hadn't been around for a lot of her children growing up, because she'd been out traveling and doing work that took her away from her family. So people make decisions, or have to make trade-offs between what they can have. And I think when I was growing up, I was very much told, you can have it all. Don't worry, you can do everything and you can have it all. And I think as I've aged into my career, I've realized that's absolutely not possible. You can you can be happy, you can have enough, but I don't think it's, well, I certainly haven't found a way to have a stellar career, an amazing family life, a personal life and hobbies, a side hustle doing blog writing and writing books, and go to sleep at night and get 12 hours and do all my exercises and all the other kind of stuff. It's a lot to fit in. So I think that the key thing that I have grown into learning is that we have seasons in life, and that it's fine to pour all of your energy into your work at some point. And it's also fine if you're in a season of life where you are a parent or a carer for elderly relatives, to sort of dial it back a bit. We don't always have to be fighting for the next promotion. If you need a couple of years where you're not and you're just happy doing what you're doing, then take that. There might be opportunities to advance your career in different directions later, if indeed that is what you choose to do. But I think I started out thinking, what's next, what's next, what's next? And I've come into my later 40s thinking, actually, right now, this is enough. I think that was a
Yes,
bit of a rambly philosophical answer to your question.
I do think that it's a very profound takeaway or lesson that you're sharing because, and I've reflected on this with a couple of friends. I recently was talking with a friend of mine who was considering a major career move, and they were looking at it purely from the perspective of, this is what it's going to be for my career. And my question was, are you sure you want to do that? Because it has a personal price that comes with that, and we don't always kind of consider all of these different angles. I remember about 20 years ago, I was chatting with a colleague, and telling him, I'm very ambitious. I want to be an executive in this company, and I want to do it before a certain particular age. And he jokingly said to me, are you sure you want to be an executive in this company? Because if you do, then you owe it a divorce. And that was kind of almost shocking because I had not considered the specific sacrifice that came associated with that. And that may have been kind of a joke, but I do think that there is some truth to the fact that we have to prioritize. And for some people, personal goals are set at a certain level, and for others it's different. But I think that the key takeaway for me in terms of hearing what you just said is, if you're able to clearly think about what is it that I want to achieve both personally and professionally, then you can kind of prioritize that and determine what's best for you and your professional career.
Yes. And I think once you've decided what that is, you surround yourself with a support network, because I don't know about people watching this, but I'm a lot of my book, Managing Multiple Projects, talks about productivity and efficiency and efficient ways of working. Um, Admittedly through quite a neurotypical lens, but I've tried to include other perspectives in there where I can. And doing some of the research for the book and reading other books on productivity, I got very tired with reading advice from men who had a wife who did no childcare and were like, yeah, I get up at 5 o'clock every day, and then I have my breakfast and I do 2 hours in the gym, and then I prioritize my to-do list and I make all my calls before 9. I think, yes, but that's you're only able to do that because of the support network around you. That
Mm.
means that you have a wife who picks up the slack for running the house, dealing with the children, or maybe you're 20 and don't have any other responsibilities, then great for you. But at my stage in life, with two children and a family and parents who are aging towards the elderly side of the scale, um, we have to balance our whole lives, not just what we want to get out of work. And the greater your support network that you can build, and finding a family friendly company if that's important to you, or finding out what else is out there in terms of support to help you create some kind of work-life balance that works for you, I think is really important. And also ignoring all the advice from people where it doesn't speak to you. If it doesn't feel helpful, there is no one size fits all in life or in project management. So we just have to take what's relevant and ignore what doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned companies. Something that came to mind, I saw a quote yesterday online that talked about that. I think something like maybe 80% of people between the ages of 33 and 45 are going to be applying for a new job with a new company in the next 6 months or so. And
Wow.
for those of us who have not grown up like our parents, where we graduate college or we graduate high school and we join a company, stay in it for 30, 40, 50 years, then we retire. Most of us have seen multiple companies, if not even multiple careers. And I think that for younger generations, that gets kind of amplified. So if you kind of reflect on your own career and some of the jobs that you've joined, you mentioned finding the right company. What advice would you have thinking about, for those individuals who are looking at making a job change or are searching, what are some things to look for in terms of the type of companies that they should be looking at versus perhaps some red flags or at least areas where they should ask questions?
Okay, two things jump out at me there. One, from my experience, I started out in financial services because I started work for American Express. I just fell into that because they offered me a job as a graduate. And there was nothing wrong with financial services. I enjoyed it while I was there. And when I came back from France, I was offered a job in a healthcare company. And pretty much, I reckon that was a mistake on the part of the insurance, in part of the recruitment agent who had helped me apply for the job, because they at the time, Bupa, which is a UK company, did insurance, but also had a healthcare wing where they had nursing homes and care homes and hospitals. And I ended up going for the interview, not really realizing that I would be leaving insurance and being offered a job in the sort of healthcare section of this company. And that was a very happy accident, I think, because it not, it wasn't until I didn't work in insurance anymore that I realized that healthcare was an amazing career opportunity and a lovely place to be with. And I've stayed in healthcare with lovely people and a really core that met my core values. Something that I'm going to work, and okay, I work in IT projects and do lots of stuff behind the scenes with processes and governance and all that. But at the end of the day, as an organization, we exist to make people's lives better. And that is a sort of goal that has felt more at home for me than how do we sell insurance to people. we I mean, insurance also is useful because if you're having a bad day and your house goes up on fire, you've got that security blanket, and we're there to offer um, safety and security in a different way to people. But it didn't ever connect with me in an emotional sense in the same way that healthcare has. So I suppose this is a long way of saying, if you're looking for a new job, we have to spend an awful lot of time at work with those people who we work with, and I think it really needs to be a role in a job where you feel connected to the mission, or that you're interested in the deliverables or the things that the company does. So if you really, don't care about gyms, for example, don't go and work in a gym organization. If you don't like working with members of the public, maybe retail project management is not for you. If you're really interested in space science, then maybe there are some big engineering projects, maybe there's some sustainability projects, maybe there's some NASA type engineering work that you could get into. There's so many different industries out there that whatever you're interested in, from textiles or cooking or pets or anything, animals. One of the case studies in my book is a little quote from a lady who works as a project manager in a zoo. So there's so many things that we could do as project managers. Try and find something that's going to excite you every day, because you're there for years and years and years. And also, when you're choosing a job, look at the cost of living, because I think at the moment this is particularly relevant. We have a little bit of cost of living crisis. So if you are thinking that you'll take a job and it's overseas, or it's in a different state, or it's in a different town, what's that going to mean for your salary? And does that mean that you need to be negotiating a bigger salary? Because what you don't want to do is end up taking your dream job and yet find out that really it doesn't work for you financially. So being able to budget personally and know what you're worth, what you should be going into your negotiations with, and then finding an industry that really interests you. I think if you can get those two things right, then you can set yourself up for success.
Absolutely, that's great advice. And in the vein of great advice, as you look at where project management is headed, what are some key points or what's some advice that you can offer to individuals who are interested in project management as a career path or interested in joining the profession?
Um, Advice about how to get into project management. I think the thing to get your head around really is that every company calls project managers perhaps by a different job title, and certainly the role that you do will end up being quite different. So I've been in companies where the project has been very hands-on, and I've led everything and been responsible for everything. I've been the figurehead for the project. I've been in the same company, but doing a job where I'm very much behind the scenes in a supportive role to somebody else who is the figurehead for a project. And I've been in other companies where it's more of an internal consultancy role or more of a program management role. So I'm doing a lot of program management at the moment. So it's different. The job kind of changes depending on where you are, which means we have to step into whatever it is that needs to be done in order to get the project delivered in on time, on budget, on scope, with the requirements, meeting the quality standards, with good stakeholder engagement along the way, and all those sort of hygiene factors. So I think as a takeaway, think about what the sort of classic project management is that you learn on a training course or that you can learn from reading a book about project management. But when you get into the actual job, you've got to think about how can you apply that in the environment that you're in to get the best possible result for the project. Because your duty is really to the project, to getting that completed in the most appropriate and efficient way. And then you start to become a bit indispensable, and people start to value you for the contribution that you're making and your can-do attitude. So, I think then you can start to make a difference in an organization.
Great. And I would probably say, given your background, uh, your ability to write and your degree in English literature probably uh, maybe it was counterintuitive, but probably helped quite a bit in terms of your communication skills and understanding how different people communicate differently. Maybe that could have happened also in your assignment overseas as well.
Yes, I like to think that communication is one of my natural strengths, but I also and it's really important for project managers to be able to communicate effectively. But we have an awful lot of tools available to us now. So if you don't feel that communication is your natural skill, or that you are having to work in a language that's not your first language, then there's so many tools available in terms of getting ChatGPT or Copilot to redraft emails, using Google Translate, tools that we didn't have 20 years ago or weren't so well used. So I think there's not really any excuses now for not being able to turn out um, communication at a professional business standard. And then the more you start to read things um, and practice using that, the more it becomes second nature, to the point where it's probably detrimental. Because I speak to my husband and my children as if they're using project management jargon, or here are the milestones on the route for our holiday. Here's what we have to organise. This is the critical path for cooking a roast dinner. And it's laughable, really.
Absolutely. I think that's probably very similar to many of us who are in the profession. We find that the jargon somehow migrates into our personal life as well. Well,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Well, I
this
put
has
my
been
wedding plans in Microsoft Project, so
fantastic. Um, well, this has been a great discussion. I very much appreciate you joining me on the podcast, and it's been long overdue. And I'm glad that we're able to, connect face to face and exchange, ideas and discussions. And hopefully, we can repeat it in the future. So I just wanted to take this time, this opportunity to thank you and wish you great success and continued success, both professionally and personally.
thank you so much for having me on the show.
Great. And thank you all for joining us. This is Philip Diab with Project Management Matters. Until next time, have a great day.